Hi, I am Allie Camilletti, and you are listening to Snack Leadership. I will be talking about everything leadership, broken down into bite-sized pieces. You will hear what different leadership skills look like in organizations and how they can rise teams up or take them down. I help leaders build resilience and improve performance by bringing awareness to opportunity behaviors in my business. Spark your mindset. I provide leadership and sales coaching, as well as team building and guest speaking. My hope is for you to feel inspiration and to create a spark in your mindset. Hi everyone, today we are talking about Zen leadership. Zen leadership encompasses humility, self-awareness, and empathy. Jeff Eschliman is an executive coach with 30 years of experience ranging from combat in Iraq to the corporate boardroom. He's a sought-after expert for building and scaling results-driven teams. And his leadership style is characterized by personal development, consistency, and a tenacious work ethic. When I read up about Jeff and I learned of his strength with his Zen for Success model, where he focuses on creating harmony and success in his clients' lives, I wanted to learn more. So Jeff, thank you so much for taking the time today and sharing your knowledge with us.
Absolutely delighted to be here, Allie.
All right, so let's start off. What have you recently learned about yourself?
Well, I don't know that I've recently learned it, but this is what I've certainly learned about myself over the years, which is that I can't do it all. And I really strived for so long in my career and my life to try and get it all done. And that doesn't mean that I'm somehow now doing less, because I'm doing just as much as I've ever done. But what my Zen model has helped me get to is a place of where I'm doing more of the right thing and not so much of everything. And so it's a game that I still have to play every day, and I still have to check myself when I'm starting, when that anxiety creeps in, if your to-do list is not all the way complete or things of that nature. So it's a work in progress, but that's it, that I can't get it all done. And maybe at some point in the conversation today, I'll get into my analogy of the plate spinning, but that's my euphemism for what trying to get it all done looks like. But that's what I've really figured out.
I relate to this very much. And it has been a bit of a theme for, I would say, this year so far, which I'm looking at shifting right now. Sure. But can you give an example? Because I think everybody has their own ideas of what does getting it all done look like? And so for you, what does that look like?
So for me, when it was getting it all done, it was, and I'll use this example from my corporate life. And so I worked in corporations for a lot of years, and so they're really big on quarters and year ends and things of that nature. So, and here's how it worked for me, Allie. I was sitting on my sofa probably at, 9:30 or 10 at night, and it was probably the 30th of March. Why do I know that? It was because it was the end of a quarter. And I'm sitting there, hammering out my goals because I'm getting ready to go off-site to a leadership retreat, and I'm getting ready to report out on what the metrics are. Like, how did I do personally? How did my teams do? Because that's what we're going to be doing at the retreat, is reviewing all of our goals and looking at the performance. And it's 9:30 at night, and I'm still trying to get things checked off because I wanted to go to that meeting and I wanted to be all in the green, right? I don't want any yellows, and I certainly don't want any reds, either in my personal goals or what my team is working on from an initiative or performance standpoint. And so here I am at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, hammering these goals, sending emails to people. And not that it dawned on me in that moment, but later on I would reflect and say well, how come I'm not doing that with my body fat percentage? Or, because, I'm not coming home at night and, hey, honey, how is our time, that we've been spending together, working out. If you were going to give me a grade on a, scale of 1 to 10, what would I get right now? Because it feels like for my own, if I were to give my own evaluation, it's about a 2.5, right? And through that reflection, right, I said to myself, like, well, why is it? Like, I'm up at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, hammering out these goals and keeping all of my work thing going, again, like the plate spinning. But why don't I do that in my personal life? Like, am I waiting for my, wife to tell me it's over? Or am I waiting for my kids to, say, hey, Dad, like, how come you haven't been to one of my soccer games all year or anything like that? Or each time I step up on the scale and I'm checking my weight or my body fat percentage or any of that, and it's not the number that I want or where I think it should be, is it because I'm giving that less attention because I'm not going to go to a leadership retreat? Because if I did have to go to the leadership retreat and report on how much quality time I was spending with my spouse or what my body fat percentage is, I'll bet you that I would have been more focused on it. And so it's that type of scenario of how I had to come up with the whole Zen for success concept, because I didn't want to be the richest man in the graveyard or any of these other analogies, right?
It's so good. Thank you for expanding on that. And that leads us right into, was that when you first embodied this leadership skill and really what the catalyst was for it?
It was definitely the catalyst.
Yeah.
I would say the embodiment part, though, took years. It took years for me to, break the cycle of, what I was so used to. I was so used to being a high level performer in my organizational role when I was working by myself as a craftsman. And then when I started to get my first teams, and then all the way up to this organizational level where I was a senior level executive. And so I was used to this high level of performance. And so it was hard for me, to pull back in certain areas and get the whole dynamic, including, my personal relationships and the other things. I keep referencing like my personal health, because unfortunately I had to run my personal health into a ditch right before I finally figured that part out and had to do things differently for myself. So I'd say the embodiment happened over years, and it was a combination of this self-awareness, right, for myself, of understanding like, well, what's my own natural proclivity, and then this ingrained, I'm calling it ingrained, this, I built it for myself, right? This, not house of cards, if you will, but, this style that was so high D and built on achievement and built on success and all of these things that, I'm still built that way. I still, am interested in success and achievement, except now I've been able to create harmony where it's all of the pieces of life. My personal well-being, which includes, not only the physical, which I've been mentioning, but like the mental well-being, right? And then, again, relationships and all these other roles in my life. So I would say it's been a lot more of an evolution over time than it was, it was more of an epiphany on how I realized that breaking the cycle of, and then what do they also say, Allie? Like, when you get into those cycles of success, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, what do they say? Nothing fails like success, right? You can have so much success in your life that ultimately, and you hear this, right? Like any of the like behind the music kind of stories or any of that stuff, right? Where, success is a tricky game.
It is tricky. And I'm so with you. So you have me curious, because I have my own thoughts on what I do to kind of keep myself in check with this, because balance is very important to me at this point in my life and just where I'm at. And health plays a big role in that, because I know what stress can do to our health. But what did you do over this time period when you were striving to embody it, but you were still struggling with these old behaviors, subconscious, raised, however they came about? What did you do to help keep yourself in check?
Well, two things. I've used some of the principles that came from my corporate experience to now leverage what I call this life of harmony that I'm living. And so that comes twofold, Ali. The first one is I'm super intentional about how I want my life to work
Yeah.
and how my life works versus just how I was super intentional about how business worked.
Yeah.
And then the second is, and this was the keystone habit that started for me. It was what I refer to as my day of Zen. So again, I copied something from corporate. Remember how I said I was sitting on the sofa, I was hammering out my goals because I was going to an offsite leadership retreat. And so what I started telling myself is, okay, I'm this busy executive and I'm running really hard, but we can somehow as a leadership team take a whole day off every quarter and 2 days at the end of the year where we go off site and we do nothing but work on strategy and tactics and how we're going to do it. But it's the old example of working on the business versus working in the business.
Yep.
And so I patterned that for my own personal life. And I started taking retreat days for me personally. And again, I had to go through an evolution. I tried to do this on a weekend and it just didn't feel right to me. And then I tried to do it on a work day, but it didn't feel right until I took a work day and I took a vacation day and I combined them. And this now, Allie's like 15 years later. So every month I take an entire day away. And the tagline for my day of Zen is called check out so you can check in, right? You're checking out. And everybody in my life knows this. My significant other, my children, my business, everybody knows. And it's usually the last Monday or Friday of any given month where I take the entire day. And the day of Zen for me is two things. It's three things. But the first two things are, it's first of all, a wholesale review of how the prior month went. And then second, it's reflection. And then it's planning for the following month. What am I going to do to crush this following month? And laying out a detailed plan. Again, very intentional about what I want. And then the third thing that I mentioned, which is it's a minor one in my day of Zen, but it's a major thing in life where I call it white space, right? You're just creating some white space in your life where you can think, right? Because we're so busy today in our modern day, full of information, social media, all of this, we have an abundance today of information, but what we have as a society, unfortunately, is a poverty of attention. And so
I love this.
That's what the Zen, it's a touchstone for me. It's a place where I go to get quiet and reflect and review and plan. And so many people don't take the time to do exactly what I'm talking about.
No, I thought you were going to say something so different. I really did when you started with that, because I'm like, oh yeah, I took one of these Friday. As you started talking, I'm like, oh, I did not do that. No, what I did is a client rescheduled and I was like, we have fresh snow and I'm seeing some blue sky. I'm going to go cross country ski for the day.
Right.
But for me, my biggest epiphanies or innovations come from when I'm in nature. And I don't do that as structured. I love it. I think it's great. I commend you on it. And I'm so excited for everybody that's listening to this and how they are going to implement this, because I think it's amazing. So share with me like a company that you've worked for that you really felt was encompassing this Zen leadership style in their organization and what that felt like.
Well, it was one of the two biggest drivers of our overall success. And so I had a leader who brought this foundational formula and introduced it to me like in the beginning of this process. So this would have been 15 years ago. And he said, it's all about people, right? So we're going to find the right people. We're going to equip them with the tools that they need to be successful. And then here's the hard edge part that makes business work well. And then we're going to hold them accountable for results, right? And that's what I do now as an executive coach since I've retired from doing all this corporate stuff, is I go in and work with CEOs and founders and their organizations. And that's what I help them do is, and I'll tell you, the most rewarding thing for me in my entire career, Allie, is the people side of the equation. And in spite of making tons of money and being really successful in all of that in business, which is good. What I'm most proud about is the people side of the equation. It's doing all of that and winning like best places to work, like where your team votes, right? And says, I love working here because people want to be associated with a winner. That's why, people, you see these teams like the New York Yankees, they haven't won a pennant in years, and yet they still are, sell more merchandise related to their team than anybody in sports, because they built dynasties and people want to be associated with being a part of a winning organization.
I totally agree. And when I think about the companies that I've worked with, that's where they struggle. And I was thinking about like going backwards, like the companies that I've worked with where they hired the right people, but the onboarding wasn't there and the accountability is out the window.
Right.
And usually it's going back to they're not always hiring the right people.
I work in, starts there.
Right? I work in an industry that is very family. Like there's multi-generations, there's multiple family members in the organization. And it's tough because, great, they're family, but that doesn't mean they're in the right seat or they're the right fit.
Right.
And it makes it so hard, but love this. So I would assume the majority of the clients that you're working with, it's because they need this. And do you find that maybe they are hiring the right people, but the onboarding isn't there, or is it all back to not the right people?
It's all back to square one. Like
Right.
I'll tell you, Allie, it is shocking to me how many people are out there hiring that don't even have an accurate job description for the job that they're recruiting for. And I think you should go even beyond you should start with a well-written job description, but then I'm into creating a job posting that gets to the heart of who you want. Are you familiar with Amundsen, the guy that led the first successful trip to the South Pole?
No, I'm not.
This is in the early 1900s. He was from, I think he's Scottish, but they launched the mission from England. And he wrote a job posting and put it in the paper that basically said men wanted, right? For perilous journey, right? Yeah. Long nights of, complete darkness, bitter cold. He basically said the chances that you're going to die on this mission are high. And then he closed with, just in case we succeed, fame and recognition forever. And why did he write why did he write a posting like that in the paper? Because he was looking for specific types of people, right?
Yeah.
The ones that would go on this perilous mission and they would put in the work in the complete darkness, right? Knowing that there was a chance they were going to die. And they were doing it all because they wanted, the recognition or whatever. And I'm not espousing that that's, a brilliant, vision that everybody should aspire to. I'm just using it as an example where if you really know what you want from this role and then you tell the world what you want, guess what you're way more than likely to get than if, right? Yeah. And what I see out of so many companies that I work with today is they're just happy to get applicants. They're just happy to get, a warm body in the door. And what I'm saying is, as a leader, that's the last thing on earth that you can settle for, because there is nothing more debilitating than making a bad hire and then taking like another 4 or 6 months to figure that out, because then it takes like a whole year to just push the reset button on one hire. So these things in my mind, Allie, are all critical to the outcome. Again, it's that finding the right people part and those elements, and then you get into onboarding, and then you get into how your team is effectively that's the other part that I was going to mention in business is if you don't have effective metrics and KPIs and visibility around how your organization is performing, then you're not really effective. You're not really effectively telling your team what our performance is. And then if you have a really beautiful program that gets all the way down to the individual level, that's where you're telling individual team members, here's how your performance, so Phil, we're going to bring you in today on our one-on-one and we're going to talk about how you're doing. You're doing a great job, Phil. And then here is how your results are affecting the greater good, how your results are affecting the team. And when you have an organization that's running like that, and I've been in this type of organization, you can even pivot, just like we had to pivot in a pandemic, right? To say,
Yep.
Hey, life's going to look different going forward. So, and if you don't have that, if you don't have the ability to toggle and shift your team, that's how companies go out of business. And that's how companies stay average forever.
Oh, okay. We need to get going, but I got to ask, do you use personality assessments and which one's your favorite?
Yeah, we use a range. The advanced insights is the one that I've been using most recently, and it's the one that gives. I mean, there's DISC and there's all the other ones, and they all have merit, right?
Yeah.
Here's what I would say, and this is what I would say about this tool in general: is it is a tool. Right.
Yes.
And so if used along with other effective methods, then it can be an effective tool for self-awareness and honestly, that's why I like advanced insights, is because it is the best indicator for your own personal awareness and understanding how your style, both of thinking and then communicating, affects your team.
So good. Okay.
Yes.
Mentor. Who's been your favorite leadership mentor?
My favorite leadership mentor is Jim Rohn, personal development giant. He was a guy, he helped me in that turning point when I crashed my physical health into a ditch, and it wasn't just my physical, it was my financial and relationships and other things. I needed what he had to say in my life. He was very candid, and he didn't pull punches. He's the kind of guy that said, okay, so you're broke, right? And you're 38 years old. Like that's not good. But he didn't leave me there, right? He gave me a path, and that path started with how I thought, and not just how I thought, but how I educated myself. Earl Nightingale was my segue into personal development, and that led me to Jim Rohn. But Jim Rohn is the person that I would say who has had the outs of somebody that I don't know, right? Somebody that I tapped into, and I used their body of work to change my entire life. It's Jim Rohn.
So good. Okay. How about a quote that you really feel embodies our topic of Zen leadership?
It wouldn't be fun unless I used a Jim Rohn quote. And not only is this a Jim Rohn quote, but this is the last line of my core written purpose. And so I have an entire paragraph that lines out why I feel like God put me here on this planet, right? And how I'm doing it. And even though it's a paragraph long, that's hard to say to somebody, but I can say the last line, which is this Jim Rohn quote, that I could tell you in one sentence how I will go to my grave trying to do this one thing every day. And it's actually two things. So the quote is, I want to be happy with what I have, comma, while I pursue what I want. And I love the juxtaposition in that, because I'm simultaneously tickled with my life today and everything that it has in it. And yet I want more. I want to have a bigger impact. I don't think, looking into the eyes of my grandchildren yesterday while they were over at my house was beautiful. I think, I only have one child who's having children right now, and I have two more that'll probably be married in the next 3 to 5 years. And so the likelihood of that increasing, increases every day, right? And so whether it be like my role as a grandfather or my role as a leader, or just even how we started this, Allie, like talking about self-awareness, like my own journey of self-awareness and self-reflection. And my holy grail is self-mastery, mastering my own thoughts, my own discipline, my own execution, right? And it's, and it's so humbling, right? To do something and fail, or do something and not live up to your own expectations, and then try to go back and level set and learn some different knowledge, or embody something, or get a different mentor, things of that nature. So anyway, that's the quote that resonates with me so much. It's in my core written purpose for my life.
Awesome. We could talk for a very long time. I love everything that you're talking about right now, Jeff. I like to close with, what's your favorite snack?
I'll tell you what my favorite snack is recently. It's mixed nuts.
What kind?
Because it's the old school kind of Planters, but it's the deluxe version that has everything but peanuts in it. And so I've recently gotten into like intermittent fasting, and nuts are just a good, healthy, fatty kind of, additional introduction into my diet. And so that is it's about the only snack that I allow myself when I'm intermittent fasting right now. So that is definitely the favorite.
That is great. Thank you so much for your knowledge. I am really excited for everybody to hear everything you have to say. Thank you.
You bet. It's my pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to Snack Leadership. I hope you felt inspiration, motivation, and felt your mindset spark. Snack Leadership is recorded and produced by myself, Allie Camilletti, and music by Shireen Amini.